Twist it, braid it, style it, free. Kinky, curly, let it be. My hair is my freedom. My crown is my freedom. So it was strange, so creatively. Redefining true beauty. New season, new day. My superpower. My superpower. It's my superpower.
Oh man, excellent. I am Michele G, and I am the CEO of Ebony and Jed, and it is my honor to be with these amazing ladies today. We are Ebony Power Talks 100. It aligns with Ebony Power 100, where we honor the most amazing, brilliant African Americans, and we're doing that on October 23rd. But today, brought to you by Dove, we are going to talk about the Crown Act, and really it's creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. So I would love to introduce you to AC Eggleston-Bracey, and she is going to talk to us about how we got on this journey. And AC, take it over.
Thank you, Michele, for having us. We're so excited to be here, and I love that video, Our Hair is Our Freedom. So that's how it all got started. So again, my name is AC Eggleston-Bracey, and I have the privilege of leading the beauty business, including Dove for Unilever in North America. And this all got started because Dove, I say our life's work is championing for real beauty or beauty inclusion. And, you know, when I came to the business, I thought, what does that look like for Black people and Black women? And whenever we talked to Black women, it was always about our hair. And wanting to make a difference for Black women, of course, what do? We squat up. And in that, I brought in Kelly and Arlena, a part of Joy Collective. That's a Black-owned, woman-owned agency to help us understand what's up with our hair and Black women. Of course, we know personally. And we realize that consistently, the issue is our hair is not respected today. So much so what we see is young people turned away from school because of their textured hair. They get all dressed up for the first day of school in their braids, and they're sent to the principal's office, or worse yet, the nurse's office, and told they have to leave because of their hair. So together, what we did was work and champion something called the Crown Act, which is anti-race-based discrimination legislation. The Crown Act stands for Creating a Respectful Open World for Natural Hair, and Dove founded the Crown Coalition behind the support of Senator Holly Mitchell, who we met, who is excited to champion this legislation first in California. Who guided us to that was my girl over here, Ajua, if she can wave and give a shout out, who gave us the idea that we could make a legislative impact behind the forming of the Crown Coalition. So ladies, hey.
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 That's amazing. Thanks, AC, for that background. So Kelly, let me kick it over to you. Talk to me about Joy. Talk to me about how important it is that Black agencies create the narrative for programs like this, for clients like this. Talk to me a little bit about that.
That's awesome. Thank you for having us here. And thank you for that, AC, as well. I'm smiling, thinking about the journey. And it's such an honor to have the opportunity to work on this project. We at Joy Collective, Orlena and myself, are owners of the business, and we pride ourselves on every day creating movements and initiatives that will help change people's lives for the better, really rooted and grounded in cultural insights. And we know our community, we believe, intimately, because we are Black women, we are Black people. And so we do work that really moves the needle for us and champions work on behalf of brands like Dove and AC. And I just want to say, again, such an honor to have the opportunity to work as a Black agency on this initiative, helping Black women and Black men. And when AC talks about the importance of squatting up, I always talk about the importance of speaking up. It took AC to speak up to say, we often need a person in the boardroom, in that executive suite saying, we should consider a Black agency. Why haven't we considered a Black agency? That was the question that AC said. And you need that champion in those walls, in those halls, to ask for a Black agency. So just want to shout out AC for that. Thank you. Thank you for Michele for all that you're doing, and everybody on this phone call, because it's all about speaking up, squatting up, and then ultimately showing up.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's an honor for Ebony to honor you. So the Crown Coalition, you ladies are being honored on Saturday with another, I guess, 96 people, because they're 100, and that's awesome. So Arlena.
Yes. Hey, Michele.
Listen, that's my girl, Arlena, her husband and I, that's my man, 50 grand.
We go back.
Right. So talk to us about natural hair. Talk to us about why this is so important, right? I remember an Ebony cover from the 60s or 70s, and it was about men and their hair, and it was their expression of freedom, and things haven't changed. And we know that Black women are put in a place, in a bucket, in a box, because of how they look and how they wear their hair. So talk to me about that. Talk to me why this journey is so important to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Michele. First of all, congratulations for Ebony Power 100 coming back, and for this honor. It's amazing. But I have to be honest, I'm so glad you asked me that question, because as you all know, we're all part of the same sisterhood. I'm an African immigrant. I'm a West African, like Ajua is. And so, having spent my childhood in Nigeria, I know the history and the heritage of Black hair. I know how much it represents our status in society. It represents our community, and very much from a tribal perspective in Nigeria, even to this day, but it dates back to the 14th, 15th, 16th century. All of that was intentionally removed and taken from us when we were enslaved in this country. So the importance of natural hair, it is an identifier, not just of our race, which is something that was given to us as a social construct. It is an identifier of our history and our heritage and our connection to Africa and the African aesthetic. So it's critically important, because the link to the Crown Act and the relevance of the Crown Act is the fact that it is showing that our hair is an extension of our identity. And it cannot be distinguished. Therefore, when you seek to erase or marginalize a characteristic of our identity, you are erasing us. And we are saying with the Crown Act that we simply don't accept that. That's why it's important. And that's why it's so important to me, because it is very much a part of our Blackness and how we show up in the world.
Man, I love that answer. Ajua, how are you doing?
I'm well, sis. How are you? Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, listen, I don't know if we've met in person, but if we haven't, I will be following COVID protocols next Saturday, but I'm gonna give you a hug when nobody's looking.
And I'm gonna give you one back.
I appreciate that. So let me ask you this, we talk about all the time, we're taking action. Talk to me about how this action has manifested into results. How many people have you helped? And tell me maybe a story or two that you can think about that this mission has had an impact on. I would love to hear that. I think everyone else would too.
Well, thank you so much for the question. I'm going to try to make sure I tackle all of them. But first, again, just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, especially with my sister squad, and to talk about the critical importance of ensuring that we are shifting not just policy, but also shifting culture. I am reminded, as my sisters who spoke before me are talking about the importance of sisterhood. And when you talk about the power of when and wherever Black women meet, we actually met on an elevator back at Essence Festival in New Orleans in 2020. So before some of the cases that became more widely known, we had decided collectively, tapped by my soror, my big sister Kelly, and my West African sister over there, Lena, and my Panhouse sister, AC, and again, just talking about the power of sisterhood, the fact that Essence Festival would be the backdrop of where we sort of came together and formed this coalition, I think is just an extra special touch when I think about the journey. As it relates specifically to the Crown Act itself and the impact, again, noting the critical importance of not just changing the laws, but also shifting the narrative where the African aesthetic is concerned, where ensuring that it is also Black public opinion that is lifted in this space. So I sort of work right at the intersection of policy and politics. And so when tapped by my sisters to sort of lead this part of the strategy, I was obviously honored to do so. Just acknowledging, because it was touched on, but I want to ensure that I give her flowers in this very public forum. Oftentimes we will celebrate one person getting a job and one person being in the boardroom. And while that too is important, because we know we're standing on the shoulder of the ancestors who probably should have been there, but who did not have the opportunity, but also want to make sure that we get it right, because we know sometimes if we mess up, there might not be another sister in the room. That is what AC really did. So not just being an executive, because that's a sister getting a job. And while I'm happy to support that, that does not translate into change for Black people. But when you are in that room and you decide that you are going to do something for the people, your people, that then is very different to me. So I just want to elevate the importance of really embodying, if you will, corporate social responsibility. A lot of people buy dinner, you know, buy a table at a CBC dinner, or, you know, support an African American Mayors Association or an NBCSL or Nobel Women, but it is a very different ball game where you are leveraging your seat of power to really shift the culture as it relates to this sort of initiative. So I just wanted to acknowledge that while I have the whole squad. I'm going to wrap up and pass the mic. But when it comes to the impact of the Crown Act, we know that there has been, you know, it's impacted so many people, talking about race-based hair discrimination. It is the reason that far too many of our Black children have been sent home and have had educational experiences. We know that there is a fiscal impact to it. So we've had sisters and brothers who have been fired or passed over for promotions, or even having offers of employment rescinded. So while race-based hair discrimination has now been outlawed in 14 states, multiple municipalities, and will be, this bill will pass at the federal level, working diligently and collectively. The impact is something that I can't even give you a number. I get emails, text messages, DMs, et cetera, about how important this work is and how important it is for our people to engage in the public policy making that is really our responsibility beyond voting, is to really be civically engaged. So I know I said a lot, but it was all important, at least in my view, to really first acknowledge the importance of sisters working collectively to move the needle for our people.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to that, but I have to go to Supervisor Holly. Supervisor Holly, you made this a global, recognizable conversation when you said, I'm going to fight for this and I'm going to fight for it through legislation. So talk to us. Why are you so passionate about it? I see your beautiful hair. I see the picture in the back. Okay. So talk to us. Why is this, you know, and did you get any flack for that? They're like, you know, because they want to diminish all the things that we do that are important, that they don't want to look, that marginalize us as a community, as women. So talk to us about that. Talk to us about the journey.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And it has been one of the most amazing journeys of my public service career, I have to say. And what's unique, as Adjoa talked about, you know, social corporate responsibility, for me to be able to bring my policymaking experience and expertise together through AC's vision and leadership, through the Joy Collective, through Adjoa's federal and national policymaking lens, it really was an amazing kind of match made in heaven, to be honest. I heard AC speak at an NBCSL breakfast where she talked about the research that Dove had done. And I said, you know, here I'm a sister legislator, chair of the budget committee of the state that has the 5th largest economy in the world. If we started in California, that would say something. And the fact that I am locked, have been now for 18 years, was locked when I ran for office. It's the only context in which my fellow electeds ever knew me. I thought this would be an interesting kind of look and vision and paradigm to be able to bring forward. Introduce the bill. And, you know, I have to say we did multiple things. I agree with Adjoa. It's about culture shift. the law is there to protect you if your rights have been violated. Our goal is for people not to get there, for us to change the paradigm, to talk about hair is a race-based trait and therefore has the right to be protected. I knew we were onto something when the National and the American Bar Association had tracks on the Crown Act before the bill in California even became law. When the National Affinity Group for human HR professionals had a track on the Crown Act before it became law that January 1st in California, I knew we were having an impact on culture. People are getting that this time has come. And I think we did two things. We struggle with our own hair within the Black community. It's Ebony, it's his family, so I can keep it 100.
Thanks.
And we have given multiple generations of Black people and Black women a common language and a sense of pride to talk about how we have been oppressed and how we were indoctrinated to believe that our hair was less than.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, the whole point of the Crown Act is not to fall victim to the good hair, bad hair trope that we've all grown up hearing, but to say that Black people were the only group of people who were told how they could wear their hair to work in school. Our choice was removed from us. And so the vision and power around the Crown Act is to give us choice. Whether I choose to straighten my hair, whether I choose to present a $200 billion budget on the floor of the Senate with my locks, that's my right. And fundamentally what we were able to say, or I was able to say to fellow policymakers, none of you have ever decided not to vote on a Mitchell budget or Mitchell bill because I'm locked. So my hairstyle choice has nothing to do with my capacity in the workplace.
Absolutely.
So how can you choose to hire and fire and not promote people because of their hairstyle choice? And so I think it was a message that resonated. For me as a policymaker to then have the support of a Crown Coalition to take this concept and the bill we were able to write in California and amplify it, that, we don't have that capacity as policymakers. So that's why the partnership was so phenomenal, that through the Joy Collective and AC and their collective resources, the sky is the limit on the messaging and the power behind this piece of legislation, that as a policymaker, we don't have these opportunities to really see, a policy change amplified in this way.
Yeah, that's so good. And
if I may, Michele, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I just can't help but to give my girl Holly her flowers. If I can just, share the role, I always say she is my role model. She is the one that stepped up to make it happen. She is the one that created the acronym CROWN, creating a respectful, open world. She said workplace for natural hair. That was Senator Michele at the time. And she's the one that said, I see the opportunity, I'm going to do something about it. And this was February, and she had the first Crown Act passed, signed into law July 3rd, 2019. That's what Miss Holly did over here, who is now Supervisor Holly Mitchell. And for her, we are forever grateful. So it turned from 1 to number 14. And what we did at Dove was create the Crown Coalition, right? What she did was drive the Crown Act. And the Crown Coalition is Dove with 3 other partners. That is the National Urban League, Western Center on Law and Poverty, and the Color of Change. And what we did was support Holly Mitchell in getting the first act passed. So without Holly, there is no Crown Act, right? And the other thing that we did is create a framework so that people could raise their hand and say, this is important for me, by getting the Crown Act petition going. So you can go to thecrownact.com and sign the petition. We right now have over 325,000 people who have signed up to say, yes, we want the Crown Act. And this is Black, brown, and white people and more saying, when they learn about it, it's crazy in 2021 that you still can get sent home from school and denied employment because of your hair. So Holly, I just have to thank you. So much love and gratitude. Beyond Senator, now to Supervisor, you paved the way for us all with the support of this sisterhood that we have here.
AC, I appreciate that. And if I could just add, it takes partners. AC, everyone here came to California for the bill signing, and we surrounded Governor Gavin Newsom. It was his first bill signing. I thought it was symbolic that he chose, it was his first year in office, that he chose to use this bill as his first public bill signing. And you all will remember what he said. Some of the haters had begun to follow him on social media and make comments, come on, California. You've got a homelessness, you've got fires, you've got real issues to tend to. And he stopped all that in his tracks and he said, yes, some people will say this is just hair, change your hairstyle. He said it's bigger than that. This is about discrimination. And for him to stand there and look at us and get it fundamentally spoke volumes to me. The other painful piece around, as we talk about this love fest, I appreciate you, AC, are the painful stories I hear from my sister legislators in states where they don't have the kind of support I had by a governor, where they don't have leadership who won't set the bill in committee, who they've had governors who told them, do not bring that bill to my desk. So I am proud to be a part of this squad, to have done my part in California with a governor who fundamentally gets it and understood, but I cannot, not acknowledge my sister legislators across this country who don't have that kind of support. And it's tragic and we can't forget it. Recognizing that there are places who choose to willfully deny us that fundamental right.
And Aja will tell you in the 14 states, it's sisters who are standing up, championing for the Crown Act. And we could go through each state where it happened, that Ajua, Kelly, and Orlina rallied around to get this going. And it was a passion, a personal passion to make a difference. So, I could talk over and over about this, but I just could not be more inspired by Holly and this whole community and the major village that it took. And we have 80 supporters, more than 80 supporters of the Crown Coalition, because all of us are like, really? And are we going to have a sob story about it? No, what we're going to do is get to work and make the difference and change the law. And we're not done yet. 14 states, 36 more to go. And Aja is taking us to federal legislation. I'm counting on you, girl.
I love it. I love it. I just read, I think that, didn't I read this, that they won't allow swim caps that will work for sport, like if you have natural hair, you have a lot of hair, they're like, no, which is so crazy to me. Like the people just don't get it. So
that's been challenged. That's been challenged. And let me just say, the Olympics are coming to Los Angeles in 2028. I'm on the Coliseum Commission. That's the first issue I raised at my first Coliseum Commission meeting. That's been challenged, and California, Los Angeles particularly is not going to accept that.
I love that. That's
Kelly can speak to that as well, because that's another action that we've taken from the Crown Coalition. Kelly?
Yeah, we are absolutely fighting that. So we've added pools. So we're looking at, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair in the workplace, in schools, and in pools. And so having two swimmers, I'm very familiar with the discrimination and some of the racism that exists in the sport of swimming. So by helping to make sure that we have the opportunity to wear caps that will protect our hair and that do nothing to give you an advantage, it's just basic. It's like, if anything, it would slow you down because it's not tight, tight and holding it in. So it just makes no sense. But we're working on that as well as part of the Crown work that we're doing. And I love that you're working on that too, Supervisor Mitchell. That's fantastic.
Listen, I'm just enjoying the conversation. I don't even need to moderate who's up next. You guys are, because the story is just, there's just so much to say. You can't even. So I do want to ask you this, AC, because I think this is your opportunity to tell brands, stop talking about it and be about it, right? And I believe every company that you've worked for, you have brought something to the table that says, if you want to really be in the homes of African Americans, if you want to be talked about and remembered, then be something more than just a commercial. So what would you tell other brands right now and say, you have to circle around something that's meaningful, and Dove has done that. And I think they've done it in a really organic, smart way, and they're creating action.
As I say on Dove, this championing for beauty inclusivity is our life's work. It's never over. But how do you measure success? It's not what we say, it's what we do. And that's what I would say to all brands. What are you doing? You know, so many times you're trained in brand to say, what's your commercial? What's your positioning? What's your equity? What's your purpose? Your purpose is why you exist. But I say your purpose and your brand is about what you do. So if we're about beauty inclusivity, what are we doing about beauty inclusivity? And one of the many things that we're doing is championing for the Crown Act through the Crown Coalition.
I love that. So tell me about what, if you think about over the next, just say 2 years, 24 months, whether, you know, who's ever in office or not, what would you like to see? Clearly you want all of the states to turn, you want it to become federal legislation. Is there anything else that you would like to see? And how can your media partners help you do that? How can an Ebony help you get to where you want to be? Do you guys have any other plans to tell other stories? Is it, because I know all of you guys are amazing storytellers. So what's on the horizon for the Crown Act and the Crown Coalition?
Well, you said it first. The first and foremost job is to continue to broaden the Crown Act. And what that means is we cannot stop until race-based hair discrimination is ended everywhere. So that means federal legislation in each and every state. That is job one. Number two is, you know, you can legislate, that's the foundation, but you also have to change the culture. And what we want to do is normalize natural hair. Natural hair is professional. Natural hair is smart. Natural hair is beautiful. Natural hair is everything. And natural hair, whatever way you choose to wear it, is all you. And that reminds me, we celebrate natural hair on Crown Day, and we give people an opportunity to express that. So we normalize it. So how can media partners help us normalize it? It should not be the exception. When we turn on the television and we see a journalist with natural hair, or we see Supervisor Holly Mitchell with her locks that she's been wearing for 18 years. That's not the exception, that's the norm. So please help us do that and spread the word so that we can make the Crown Act federal, national, and local legislation in all the states and municipalities.
Yeah. And Michele, let me add something about quantifying impact.
Yes.
Because I think that it's important for us to put some numbers to what's happening, the domino effect that has been started with model legislation in California with Supervisor Mitchell, and what Ajua has helped lead from a legislative perspective across the country. When it comes to numbers, so when we look at 14 states, 10 which have passed the Crown Act, which is modeled after California law, the bill, and then 4 other states that have hair discrimination, anti-hair discrimination legislation inspired by the Crown Act. When you look at the Black or African-American population in those 14 states, you're looking at 12.5 million Black people. That is almost 30% of our population of Black people in this country. That means that what we have done in less than 3 years in our work and really building this movement with these women and this sisterhood, yourself included, for where you sit in the media world, we have affected and we have actually created the opportunity for legal recourse for almost 30% of our community. We have 70% to go. That's what AC is punctuating. We're not done until 100% of Black people in this country have legal recourse and protection that says your hair is acceptable, it is professional. So I want to put some numbers to that. Now, you know, Michele, I'm a former engineer, as is AC, so I can't help it. I had to run those numbers. But we need to look at that seriously. When you see we have helped and we have created, right, protection for 12.5 million Black people in this country, that is not insignificant when you quantify it. So I just want to make
those numbers,
sure.
Arlena. Speak those numbers.
So the 300 and, you know, we have over 300,000 signed petitions, but let's talk about those people who can stand up and say, no, that's not going to work. That my hair is not only natural and beautiful and normal, it's acceptable, and you will not take away my educational opportunities. You will not take away my economic trajectory and opportunities. 12.5 million people, and we have a lot to go because we know that the Black community in this country is almost 43 million. We have to continue to realize, recognize, and count those numbers and track those numbers and hold each other accountable until it is 100%, not 30%.
And back to those numbers, I thought Arlena was also going to add. I numbers are sexy, Arlena. Thank you for dropping those numbers. Dimensional noises. That's right on. You just right there.
I teed it up for you.
And what Arlena and Kelly also did through Joy Collective is we did the Dove Crown research study, and that's what Supervisor Mitchell was talking about, how broad scale the issue is. 80% of Black women have had to change their hair to fit in corporate America or any work environment or school environment. 80% of Black women.
That's
we did
ridiculous.
This study again of 1,000 Black women compared to white women. So it is broad scale. And there's tons of other stats on when we're given policies about hair and dress code, we are disproportionately given that 1.5 times more likely. So it's pervasive and broad scale. So thank you for those numbers, Arlena.
Arlena, you're so fine and sexy and smart.
I love it, Michele. Thank you, Michele. I do try. No, I think it's important for our community to know, and I give Ajua and this sisterhood so much credit, because Ajua has been on the ground across the country, and she is the racial equity and policy expert here. I have to give her credit for that. But you know what I can't help but notice as we talk about those numbers? Look at all of us. Look at us. Look at the diversity.
Yeah.
Of all of us as a sisterhood. And while there is so much commonality and strength in our unity from the community we come from and the heritage that we share, each one of us has a different hair story. Mm-hmm. I know everybody's hair story because I know everyone here, but there's so much richness. There's so much opportunity and there's so much hope in the diversity and the versatility of our hair stories. Yeah. And I just look at this picture and know that it is only a microcosm of what we represent as a larger Black diaspora, not just in this country, because this movement has gone global. And so this is what we are doing to uplift and create economic and social mobility for our people around the world. So when I talk about those numbers, that's just a starting point. But there's so much to celebrate in this conversation. And I just have to thank you, Michele, for creating and giving us one of those platforms to tell this story and how it's happened. Because it's just a reminder that each one of us individually is significant, but even more so collectively.
Yeah. It's funny. I let my hair go gray as soon as I got the job, because I was like, if I have gray hair, nobody's going to hire me. I mean, you really have to think about everything that we do. So I want to talk about Ajua. Can you talk to me really quickly? We have about 7 minutes left. This conversation went by so fast, right? About 7 minutes left. So little boys, right? And young men and men, I know that they're not left out of the conversation. There's no way, because there's the Sunrise Project that Kelly launched. I have a son, or Lena has a son. AC has a son. Supervisor, I'm not sure if you're that, but
I have a son. I have a son.
I don't know whose
locks are down his back.
You see what I'm saying? So I know they too want to know, how are they part of this conversation? So could you, I'm throwing it to you, Ajua, but anybody can address this.
Absolutely. So we know that Black girls and women and Black boys and men are inextricably linked. And so what impacts one obviously impacts the other. So while race-based hair discrimination disproportionately impacts Black girls and women, it's not exclusively. Many of the stories that have gone viral have been about Black boys. We saw in, New Jersey, where a student, he was a boy, and I'm very intentional about using that language because sometimes the adultification of Black children is a problem. So I'm reiterating the fact that he was a boy, a student wrestler who was forced to make a decision no child should have to make, and certainly not on the spot. And he was tasked with choosing between having his identity attacked and his locks cut on the spot, or forfeiting a match he had earned the right to participate in. So we saw a young Faith Finity being sent home in tears because her beautiful braids were deemed a violation of school rules. So again, yes, it disproportionately impacts Black girls and Black women. But we also saw a DeAndre Arnold, who I had the opportunity to testify alongside of in Texas, who was essentially told he could not participate in his graduation ceremony because he wore locks, which for him, given his father's identity, was a display of ethnic pride. And so again, we see this issue impacting Black people. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that being entrusted to sort of develop the legislative strategy for this movement, the first lawmaker I spoke to about the issue was then former Congressman Cedric Richmond, who was then the Congressional Black Caucus at the time. It's going to take longer at the federal level, but certainly pledged his support and then followed through to be the champion of the Crown Act in the US House of Representatives. I would also be remiss if I did not acknowledge it is Senator Cory Booker in the US Senate who is the champion of the Crown Act, and he's introduced the bill now 2 times in 2 different sessions. So again, we are linked as a people. The cultural ties that bind us, the lived experiences that bind us are something that we cannot get rid of. Not that we want to, but we are forever linked. So I just wanted to just sort of reiterate the fact that this is about ensuring that our people are good and that we are celebrating the full diversity of our beauty, whether you are 100% natural like I am now, but having my hair blown out, or rocking the twist out that I had 2 weeks ago, or locked like Supervisor Mitchell, or naturally curly like Orlena and Kelly, or curly and natural, but switching it up often because she has the right to do that as a boss over there with AC, beautifully gray like you. I am personally fighting alongside these women to preserve and protect our right to rock our crowns however we see fit, in full recognition that beauty is diverse and the versatility of our hair is something folks hate on.
So
Yes,
I want
they
to
do.
I want to, amen. I want to close on this. If somebody is having an issue, if someone is faced with this challenge, because I don't want to ever leave it open-ended, what should they do? What do you recommend they do? Who should they call? Who should they tell? How do they find an ally? And that will be our final word. And I would love for you guys to go around and just tell us how we do that. And then I'll just close out really quickly.
In California, the first state that signed the law, it's EEOC. You report it to your HR department. We've worked to educate the superintendents association so we can begin to change these school-based dress codes. But the first thing is to call EEOC, or tragically to call an attorney. That's why it's so important that we shift the culture so people don't have to get there. But if you're in one of the states that actually has the state law and is protected, it's your equal opportunity and employment and housing unit within the state department that you go to say that your rights have been violated, just as you would if you couldn't get fair housing because you were Black or female, or if you were fired because of your sexual orientation or your religion. Hair is now a protected class. So those are the state agencies, the governmental agencies that you report the abuse to.
That's amazing.
I'll just add in amending the definition of race to include those traits that are historically associated with it. What we've essentially done is we've ensured that our hair texture and or our protective styles are covered under the existing classification of race. So we haven't created a new protected class in these states. We amended the definition of race, although we fully acknowledge it's a social construct, and we'd probably get people to agree on pizza toppings before we can get them to agree on the definition of race, given there's no biological basis for it. But essentially what Supervisor Mitchell shared is pretty much the case across the country. And I just wanted to note, and then pass the mic to whoever will take it next, the importance of the strategy. So Orlena, you talked about the fact that this is certainly not insignificant, and I would just add that this is certainly not unintentional. we sat down and decided to develop a public policy campaign that would do exactly this. So I just wanted to lift all of the sisters, knowing that we are the most pragmatic, baddest strategy, whether it is legislative like I do, or social impact, or PR, or comms, or marketing. You are looking at some of the baddest strategists there are, who intentionally created a national campaign. And so part of our work is about, again, of course, shifting the laws, also shifting the culture, but then also that piece that Supervisor Mitchell talked about, which is ensuring that we are educating people. So what you do when you feel like you've been violated. And that's some of the work that we are doing after we ensure that the bill is passed. We are also working with our community partners and so many members of the coalition to ensure people not only know that the law has changed, but this is how you would essentially file a claim in full recognition that the burden of proof is still on the person who's bringing forth the claim. And thank you so much again, sis. I can't wait to meet you in person and give you a hug for elevating this conversation, because the importance of Black media is telling Black stories. And so you asked a question a little bit ago, but it wasn't, asked specifically of me, but the importance of just you having this conversation, elevating the need for us to engage in this way and to ensure that it is Black public opinion that is also informing Black public policy. Public policy in general. That is critically important. And so I just want to thank you again for doing all that you do and leveraging where you sit to elevate us.
Thank you.
Michele, the only thing I would add is we cover what's your recourse if you have the Crown Act or legislation inspired by the Crown Act, but there's most of the country that still doesn't. And so you could say, what do I do if I'm in one of those states or municipalities that doesn't? And I think there's a few things that I would want to say. You can take action wherever you are. I see people in schools, young people. I was inspired by a young girl that I met in boarding school that has something called the Curly Crown Coalition that is working to educate and even shift the policies that her school might have around dress codes that say that you cannot wear textured hair. So what you can do is help make a change in your surroundings, even if it's not legislated. We have more than 25 municipalities that have enacted the Crown Act, so not at the state level, so you can have cities and communities. So take action. And the last thing I would say is sign the petition. Have your voice heard. If you go to thecrownact.com, you can both sign the petition or have a letter sent to your local legislative official. Again, raise your hand, because the way politics works in this country, your voice matters.
Yeah. Michele, one quick thing on that note, and thank you, AC, for making sure that we said thecrownact.com, because we've worked really hard to make sure there are resources for people on thecrownact.com so that they even know what phone number to call, what website to go through. There are organizations that are members of the Crown Coalition that have committed to supporting people, even the ACLU. So there are others that are listed on thecrownact.com. So I would just ask, if you've heard all of the advice here, but go straight to thecrownact.com and look at those resources, because those at least give you a first point of entry in addition to EEOC. So just make sure that you're keeping up with that and using that resource.
And then right after that, let's go to ebony.com.
Amen.
And go to ebony.com to support Michele. You're doing amazing work there.
That's right. That's right.
So sign up for your email blast, all that.
Yes.
All that.
Thank you, Kelly.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, you always say yes. We call you all the time. We say, can you please come speak on this panel for Crown or whatever? You say yes. Say yes to you, and thank you as well.
So let me just wrap up. So I just want to, first of all, thank you guys for coming on here, having the courage to be about it instead of just talking about it, so that little girls like my daughter aren't hair shamed. It is the Crown Act. You can go to thecrownact.com, right? They can sign the petition. They can push for legislation. But I love what you said. We don't have to take anything from people. We can do and act and change. You guys started the narrative. We can finish it. Ebony.com. We want to thank you for having us today. We are the Power Talks. And thank you guys so much. We will see you in LA, and I'm super proud of the work that you guys are doing. And I can't wait to continue to tell stories and elevate the conversation along with
Thank you,
all of you.
Michele. Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much,
And Deb,
Michele.
thank you
so
for
much.
driving the message as well.